My mother handed me a crumpled $2 lottery ticket in front of 30 relatives at Thanksgiving dinner, while my sister received a $13,000 Caribbean cruise package. Everyone at the table laughed as my mother said that a $2 ticket was the only thing that suited my place in the family. They had no idea that ticket matched every single winning number for a $100 million jackpot, or that I was about to use my legal resources to tear down the fraudulent financial scheme my father and brother-in-law had built behind our backs. Welcome back to Payback Stories. I'm Lauren, and if you enjoy stories about family drama, betrayal, and karma finally catching up, make sure to hit subscribe and drop a comment. Let's get into it. My family had a strict social hierarchy, and I had spent 32 years sitting firmly at the bottom of it. I worked as a landscape architect, designing green spaces and courtyard layouts for corporate office parks. It was steady, skilled work that paid my bills, but my parents, Robert and Sandra, always treated my career like an embarrassing hobby. My older sister, Megan, was the undisputed golden child of the family. She was married to Jason, a man who claimed to be a high-level commercial real estate consultant. My parents treated Jason like royalty, hanging on his every word whenever he talked about his investments, his income, or his business deals. I pulled into my parents' driveway at 5 o'clock on Thanksgiving afternoon, carrying a salad bowl and a bouquet of dahlias I had grown in my own garden plot. My mother answered the door, took one look at the flowers, and told me to put them in the corner before reminding me that I was late to help in the kitchen. A second later, Megan and Jason walked up the front steps behind me. My mother instantly pushed past me to wrap Megan in a tight hug, gushing over her coat and asking about their drive. My father stepped out of his recliner in the living room to shake Jason's hand, offering him a drink and immediately asking for his opinion on the stock market. I took my salad to the kitchen and spent the next hour setting the long dining room tables by myself. While I was refilling the water carafes near the pantry, I heard my mother, father, and Megan talking in the hallway just outside the door. My mother was laying out the final details for a holiday vacation, explaining that the entire group was leaving on December 15th for a 2-week first-class cruise through the Caribbean. She listed off the cabin reservations for herself, my father, Megan, Jason, their 2 kids, and even my aging grandmother, Evelyn. Megan asked if anyone had mentioned the trip to me yet, and my father cleared his throat before answering. He told Megan that I was always too busy with my little plant projects, and that bringing me along would only make the group dynamic uncomfortable and expensive. I pushed the pantry door open and asked them directly why I was the only person in the immediate family not invited. My mother tightened her apron, looked at the floor, and told me that the vacation was meant to celebrate Jason's latest corporate promotion, so it was really just an internal celebration for the core family unit. My grandmother, Evelyn, walked into the hallway using her wooden walker just as my mother finished speaking. She had lived in a small historic house on the edge of town for over 50 years, though her mobility had declined significantly over the past year following a bad fall. Grandma Evelyn looked at my mother, then at my father, and told them that excluding one child while rewarding another in front of the entire extended family was cruel. My mother immediately cut her off, taking hold of her walker handles and telling her that she was clearly overtired from the noise. She pushed Grandma Evelyn toward the guest bedroom to lie down before dinner. As my mother maneuvered her around the hallway corner, Grandma Evelyn looked back at me and told me to make sure I called a local attorney named David Vance early the following week. I did not understand why she was giving me the name of a probate lawyer, but I nodded and remembered the name. An hour later, all 30 guests were seated around the expanded dining table for the holiday toast. My father stood up at the head of the table, tapped his glass with a spoon, and gave a speech about how blessed he was to have such a successful and united family. He motioned for Megan and Jason to step forward, and my mother handed Megan a heavy white envelope containing the confirmed booking confirmation for the $13,000 Caribbean cruise. The room broke into loud applause as Megan made a show of wiping away tears and hugging my parents. Once the noise settled down, my mother turned to me, pulled a thin paper slip from her pocket, and handed it across the table. It was a single $2 Mega Millions scratcher ticket she had picked up at a gas station that morning. She smiled tightly and told the room that this was all that was appropriate for my contribution to the family. Jason leaned back in his chair, laughed out loud, and told the table that luck was the only strategy left for someone without the brains to build a real career. The entire dining room chuckled at Jason's comment while my face burned with humiliation. I took the ticket, slid it into my coat pocket, and remained quiet for the rest of the evening. After dinner concluded and the extended relatives began packing up their coats, I stayed behind in the kitchen to scrub the roasting pans and clear the tables. Around 11 o'clock, while my parents were seeing the last guests out near the front porch, I went into my father's home office to collect the used coffee mugs left on his desk. The surface of his desk was covered in loose financial paperwork that looked like it had been shuffled through in a rush. Beneath several late notices for utility bills and personal credit cards, I saw a certified loan agreement bearing my father's signature alongside Jason's signature as a guarantor. The document was a high-interest private lender agreement for $180,000 at an astronomical 32% interest rate. As I turned to the second page of the file, my stomach dropped when I recognized the property address listed as collateral. It was the legal deed to Grandma Evelyn's house, complete with a shaky, uneven signature from my grandmother dated 6 months prior. I remembered that exact week clearly because Grandma Evelyn had been hospitalized with a severe hip injury and heavily medicated on prescription painkillers. My father and Jason had taken advantage of her condition to put her home up as security for a massive personal debt my father owed to Jason's private lending network. I pulled out my phone, took crisp, clear photographs of every page of the contract, and slipped out the side door without saying goodbye to anyone. 2 days after Thanksgiving, I reached out to my father's sister, Aunt Karen, and asked her to meet me for a quick conversation. Aunt Karen had always stayed on the outer fringe of family events, rarely participating in my mother's status games. We met at a quiet diner near the edge of town, and I asked her straight out if she knew anything about my father's financial problems or Jason's actual business dealings. Aunt Karen looked around the room, lowered her voice, and told me that Jason was not a legitimate corporate consultant at all. She explained that he operated a shady private lending pool that targeted desperate individuals with predatory interest rates, and that my father had fallen deeply into debt after making several failed investments with him. She added that Jason was a dangerous person to cross because he used aggressive legal maneuvers to seize properties whenever borrowers defaulted on his terms. When I got back to my apartment that afternoon, I sat at my kitchen table and pulled the crumpled $2 lottery ticket out of my coat pocket. I opened the official state lottery website on my laptop and manually typed in the numbers printed on the ticket. The first number matched, then the second, third, fourth, fifth, and the final power number. I stared at the screen, refreshed the browser 3 times, and checked the official drawing results from Thanksgiving night. I had won the full jackpot of $100 million, which worked out to roughly $62 million after the lump sum tax deductions. I did not scream, throw my hands in the air, or text anyone in my family. Instead, I carefully placed the winning ticket into a fireproof document holder, took a deep breath, and called the office of David Vance, the attorney my grandmother had told me to contact. I met with David Vance at his law office the following morning. He was a thorough, soft-spoken attorney in his late 50s who listened quietly as I explained the situation regarding the lottery win and my discovery of the loan paperwork. Once I finished speaking, David leaned back in his leather chair and pulled a thick physical folder from his desk drawer. He told me that Grandma Evelyn had actually retained him 10 years ago to set up a private, irrevocable trust fund in my name containing $500,000 from her late husband's life insurance payout. She had kept the trust completely secret from my mother and father because she knew they would pressure her to give the funds to Megan or use them to cover my father's recurring business mistakes. David then reviewed the photos I had taken of the loan agreement and the property deed transfer for Grandma Evelyn's house. He explained that taking a heavily medicated, hospitalized senior citizen and forcing her to sign over her primary residential property as collateral for a third-party debt constituted blatant elder financial abuse and contract fraud. David told me that with my newly acquired financial resources, we could launch a multi-pronged legal strategy. We could anonymously claim the lottery winnings through a newly formed limited liability company, pay off the primary institutional lien on the house to eliminate any legal threat of foreclosure, and file a formal civil lawsuit to invalidate the fraudulent transfer signed by my father and Jason. I told David to move forward with every legal action necessary to protect my grandmother, restore her full ownership of the property, and hold my father and Jason accountable. Over the next week, David worked quickly behind the scenes to establish the anonymous entity for my lottery payout, while I continued going to my regular job as if nothing had changed. My parents and Megan were completely focused on their upcoming vacation, posting constantly on social media about their packing lists, cabin upgrades, and dinner reservations. 3 days before they were set to board the ship, my mother called a mandatory family dinner at a local Italian restaurant for a pre-departure send-off. They invited me solely so I could pick up Grandma Evelyn from her assisted living facility, drive her to the restaurant, and handle her physical care during the meal while the rest of the table celebrated. Throughout the dinner, Jason made several condescending remarks about my job, asking me in front of the table if I was planning to spend my weekend pulling weeds or buying another round of $2 lottery tickets. My father laughed loudly, raised his wine glass, and proposed a toast to Jason for organizing the entire vacation package and looking out for the family's financial future. I smiled politely, took a sip of my water, and told them I hoped they enjoyed every single moment of their 2 weeks at sea. None of them had any idea that David Vance had officially filed the fraud lawsuit in county court that very afternoon, or that formal legal notices were scheduled to be served directly to my father's business address and Jason's corporate office early the following week. On December 15th, my parents, Megan, Jason, their children, and Grandma Evelyn boarded the cruise liner for their 14-day trip around the Caribbean islands. 2 days after the ship left port, local news outlets began reporting that the single winning ticket for the $100 million Mega Millions jackpot had been officially validated. The news broadcast specifically mentioned that the winning ticket had been sold on Thanksgiving morning at the Quick Mart convenience store located on Henderson Avenue. Aunt Karen immediately posted the news clip into our extended family group chat, making a casual comment about how incredible it was that someone in our tiny suburb had suddenly become a multimillionaire overnight. My mother saw the group chat message while connected to the ship's satellite internet system and instantly remembered that she had purchased my $2 stocking stuffer ticket at that exact Quick Mart on her way to the grocery store on Thanksgiving morning. Within 20 minutes of Aunt Karen's post, my mother sent me a private text message asking if I still had the exact ticket she had given me at dinner. I waited several hours before sending a short, deliberate reply telling her that I still had the ticket stored safely in my apartment. My phone immediately began ringing continuously as my mother, father, Megan, and Jason all attempted to call me from the ship's expensive satellite connection. I declined every single call, set my phone to silent, and allowed their incoming attempts to pile up in my voicemail box. By the following evening, I had accumulated over 70 missed calls and dozens of frantic voice messages. My mother's messages shifted rapidly from forced sweetness to panicked demands, begging me to confirm the numbers on the ticket and reminding me how much she had always cared for me. My father left several blunt messages stating that any financial windfalls generated from a ticket bought with his household funds technically belonged to the entire family unit. Jason left 2 calculated messages offering his personal management services, claiming he could set up tax shelters and high-yield real estate investments to ensure my money was properly handled. I listened to every single message alongside David Vance in his office, recording the audio clips to document their sudden shift in behavior. Once we had all the legal documentation, bank confirmations, and estate filings fully prepared, I sent a single text message to the family group chat. I told them I would host a mandatory video conference call at 8 o'clock that evening so I could address the lottery ticket and resolve several outstanding family matters all at once. Within seconds, every single member of the family confirmed they would be present in the ship's private lounge for the call. At precisely 8 o'clock, I logged onto the secure video link from my laptop. The screen opened to show my mother, father, Megan, and Jason sitting around a small table in the ship's mahogany-paneled lounge, with the dark ocean visible through the large glass windows behind them. My mother instantly leaned close to her camera, her voice full of artificial warmth as she asked how her favorite daughter was doing and remarked on how much they missed my presence on the trip. My father nodded eagerly beside her, telling me that family always comes first and that he was ready to help me navigate whatever big news I had to share. Megan chimed in to say how happy she was for me, while Jason sat back with a confident posture, telling me that he had already drafted a preliminary financial management structure for my capital assets. I sat calmly in front of my desk camera, held up a printout of the official lottery validation certificate showing my name and the cleared funds, and confirmed directly that I had indeed won the full net payout from the Thanksgiving ticket. Before any of them could celebrate or speak, I used the software controls to share my laptop screen directly with their feed. The first image that popped up on their display was a high-resolution scan of the $180,000 predatory loan agreement my father had signed with Jason. My father's face drained of color instantly, and he sat completely frozen as I read the principal terms, the 32% interest rate, and the default clauses out loud to the room. I then clicked to the next document, displaying the property deed transfer for Grandma Evelyn's house alongside her official medical charts from the hospital showing she was heavily sedated on narcotics on the exact date her signature was executed. My mother looked at my father in absolute shock, asking him what the document meant and why Grandma Evelyn's house was listed on a private contract. I explained to the entire table that my legal team had already presented the medical evidence and signature analysis to a judge, resulting in an immediate court order that voided the deed transfer due to legal fraud and undue influence. Furthermore, I revealed that I had used a portion of my own capital to pay off the primary bank mortgage on the property in full, officially transferring the house into a protected legal trust managed exclusively by David Vance for Grandma Evelyn's sole benefit. I informed my father that neither he nor my mother would ever hold any ownership stake, legal claim, or inheritance rights to that property under any circumstances. My father stammered, telling me that family members do not take legal action against their own parents, but I looked directly into the camera and told him that real family does not steal the home of a sick 90-year-old grandmother. I then clicked to the final set of screen captures, displaying a series of explicit text messages and financial logs provided to my legal team by Aunt Karen and Jason's former administrative staff member, Ashley. The messages clearly documented that Jason had been maintaining an active extramarital affair with Ashley for over 8 months, while simultaneously preparing formal divorce documents to leave Megan the moment the fraudulent real estate deal was finalized. Megan turned to look at Jason, her voice shaking as she asked him if the messages were real. Jason slammed his fist onto the small table, shouted that the documents were fabricated, grabbed his phone, and walked rapidly out of the camera's frame. Megan broke down into heavy tears. My mother began screaming across the lounge at my father, and my father simply stared at the blank screen with his head resting in his hands. I told them that my legal representative would handle any further communication regarding property or estate matters, and I disconnected the video call. The fallout from that single video conference destroyed the web of lies my family had maintained for years. When the cruise ship docked back in port 3 days later, Megan immediately separated from Jason and retained her own divorce attorney. Deprived of his ability to seize Grandma Evelyn's property as collateral, Jason's private lending operation quickly unraveled under legal scrutiny. Within 2 weeks, several former clients filed complaints with the state attorney general's office regarding his illegal interest rates and predatory tactics, prompting a formal state investigation into his financial practices. Ashley publicly released additional documentation regarding his business transactions, completely ruining his reputation within the local commercial real estate sector. My father's financial situation collapsed completely once his debts were fully exposed to his primary bank creditors. Without Jason's backing or the ability to leverage family assets, his small commercial supply business went into involuntary liquidation to satisfy his outstanding tax liens and personal debts. My parents were forced to sell their large suburban house to pay off their remaining liabilities, moving into a small 2-bedroom rental apartment on the far side of town. My father eventually took a basic position working as an hourly counter clerk at an auto parts warehouse, while my mother took a part-time job scanning items at a local grocery store. 6 months after the cruise, my mother reached out to me by phone for the first time since the video call. She did not open the conversation with an apology or an inquiry about my well-being. Instead, she immediately began complaining about how uncomfortable her new apartment was, how difficult her job had become, and how shameful it was that her former friends from her social clubs were gossiping about their downfall. She accused me of being cold and cruel for withholding my lottery money from my own parents when I had tens of millions sitting in the bank. I listened quietly until she finished her tirade, And then I told her that I would always ensure Grandma Evelyn was fully cared for, but I would never use my resources to shield adults from the natural consequences of their own dishonest choices. I told her she could call me whenever she was ready to take accountability for her actions, but until then, I would not engage in any further discussions about money. My relationship with my sister, Megan, moved on a very different trajectory over the following year. A few months after her divorce was finalized, she sent me a long, handwritten letter on simple stationery. She did not ask for a single dollar or suggest that I owed her anything. Instead, she acknowledged how toxic her behavior had been toward me for decades, admitting that she had allowed my parents' favoritism and Jason's superficial lifestyle to blind her to the reality of how badly I had been treated. She apologized for laughing at the lottery ticket joke on Thanksgiving night and admitted that she had been a coward for never standing up for me when we were growing up. I waited 2 weeks before replying to Megan's letter, but eventually, I invited her to meet me for coffee at a small cafe near my new landscape architecture office. The meeting was quiet and somewhat awkward at first, as neither of us really knew how to interact without the old family dynamic dictating our roles. However, Megan took full responsibility for her past choices and was actively working 2 jobs to support her children while rebuilding her life from scratch. Over the next several months, we began meeting for lunch once or twice a month, slowly building a genuine, realistic connection based on honesty rather than family expectations. With my legal victories secured and the financial drama resolved, my primary focus shifted entirely to protecting Grandma Evelyn and building something meaningful with my life. I purchased a comfortable, single-story home near my office and had it fully customized with proper accessibility ramps, wide hallways, and professional medical support systems. I officially moved Grandma Evelyn out of the assisted living facility and brought her home to live with me, ensuring she had dedicated round-the-clock nursing care and access to the best physical therapy available. We spent our afternoons sitting together in the glass sunroom I designed for her, watching the local birds at the garden feeders and talking about her childhood. I also used a small portion of my lottery capital to expand my landscape architecture firm, moving out of my rented desk space and into a full-scale design studio with 4 full-time employees. We began taking on larger public projects, including community park renovations, public library green roofs, and hospital healing gardens. In addition, David Vance helped me establish the Evelyn Mitchell Foundation, a charitable endowment that provides full 4-year college scholarships to young women pursuing degrees in design, agriculture, and environmental science who come from unsupportive or financially unstable home environments. Reading the application essays from these young women and providing them with the resources to pursue their dreams became the most rewarding part of my new life. Winning $100 million did not magically make me happy, nor did it change who I was as a person. What the money actually provided was complete autonomy, legal protection, and the absolute freedom to remove manipulative, selfish people from my life forever. For 32 years, I believed that my value as a human being was defined by whether my parents approved of my career or included me at their dinner table. It took a crumpled $2 lottery ticket and a deliberate act of family cruelty to make me realize that my worth was never theirs to decide in the first place. I built my own life, protected the person who actually loved me, and finally created a table where truth and respect were the only entry requirements. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe to Payback Stories for a new family drama story every day, and I'll see you in the next one.